Well, yes, welcome to the Ganja Project, and thank you for coming on to speak with us. What made you decide to get involved in cannabis, first of all?
Great question. Um, so, so I'm an entrepreneur, um, and my previous venture was in tech. But I'm the kind of entrepreneur that likes to build companies that I'm particularly very passionate about, and I want to see, the the effects of them out in the world. I believe company building is hard, and in order to go through the ups and the downs, you have to truly believe in what you're building, and you want to see it to be birthed, and that makes the difficult times that much easier. My former background was in technology, and when it came to cannabis, I started to look at the space from an investment perspective, but what really got me excited was when Jamaica legalized cannabis in 2015. And as I saw the world starting to come out of prohibition, I've always wanted to build something in Jamaica. This is my home. I've always wanted to be part of like creating jobs and growth and doing something that I believe strongly in. And when it came to cannabis in Jamaica, it was a very obvious thing for me. It's challenging being in this industry. However, I just really believe that Jamaica has to have a very strong place internationally when it comes to cannabis and be recognized for that. And I really want to be part of pioneering that. And so, that's kind of how I got involved in the space. I wanted to use my experience, my network, and my ability to make change wherever I could. So that's how I got into the space.
Okay, and that's so you got involved after 2015, or were you interested prior to 2015?
No, I started to look at the space pretty much at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And, I think one of the other things for me, rather than just investing in the space here, is that, we're at the very beginning of building an industry. And I found that really exciting as an entrepreneur. The other thing is that I think fundamentally, I have a tremendous amount of national pride. I played tennis for Jamaica. This is my home, and seeing many other countries start to make strides, like the United States and in particular Canada, which doesn't really have that cultural deep history with the plant like we do, really advance. I felt
Not that we knew of, right? You know what I mean?
Sorry.
Or not that we knew about, right? You know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
like Canada. Right? You took the lead on this one. That was interesting. Yeah.
And it's just the opportunity that it presented to make real change at home got me really excited. And so those were really the sort of the reasons why I got into the space. That's my guiding principle. Like, I truly want to build a great Jamaican cannabis brand and create lots of jobs. And we've done our fair amount, and I think there's a lot more to do. And the other thing that I see is an opportunity to truly build a real industry here, where there's opportunity for obviously job creation and economic growth, but actually across the spectrum, from agriculture to farming to processing to research and development to product creation to tourism. This is an opportunity for our great country to really create some foundations. I'm excited to be part of it. It's not an easy journey at all, but I think that's part of what makes it interesting for me.
How do you see the industry developing as an industry, instead of just saying facilitating individual companies per se?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very early, and I think it's very early in the journey, and I think that's probably very frustrating for many, many people, because really what the easiest thing would be is if we just legalized cannabis properly, like full adult use, just like alcohol is. That would just make it so much easier for everyone. But unfortunately, it's highly regulated, and a large part of the reason of that is because of frankly, our signatory to the UN Convention and international unfortunately, it's really our international relations that prevent us from fully legalizing ourselves. And I don't think, if you look at countries like Canada as a great example, they are also signed up to many of these things, and yet they took bold decisions and moves. Now they're just a bigger country, right? And they don't rely they just don't rely on other large countries the way we do, right?
Well, that brings up that begs the question, as a sovereign nation. I mean, effectively, I mean, what you're really not saying, I will definitely say, is that they're just afraid of the Americans and their banking system, basically. But as because I'm afraid of America and their banking system and the federal
American banking system, American tourists. I mean, by and large, just everything to do with the United States. And it's unfair because meanwhile, we are tiptoeing on building something great for ourselves. They're amassing and building the largest cannabis industry in the world.
Well, the American at the CIA has a patent on CBD, so that should tell you their motivation. But carry.
So I think that of course presents challenges, and again, I don't envy the job of the regulator and those that have to make difficult decisions, because the cost of losing tourism to start cannabis, or losing remittances to start cannabis, I mean, those are very difficult trade-offs. If one really believes that, that would actually really happen, you kind of have to roll the dice and be bold sometimes. And I think we've, for so long, been very delicate in our journey. However, that being said, we have made some pretty bold decisions, as it comes to the way in which we've, released interim regulations. We have allowed for, the definition of medical and therapeutic to be a lot broader and easier access than, say, for example, the United Kingdom, where cannabis was legalized for medical purposes, but it's almost impossible to get a prescription. I think maybe the last time I recall, there was less than a couple hundred prescriptions written, and the cost of cannabis is so prohibitive that people who, in many cases, truly, truly need it to survive, whether it's for epilepsy or severe chronic pain, can't afford to get it, and they're not even allowed to grow their 5 plants at home. So, if you compare the Jamaican situation internationally, you start to feel a little bit better about ourselves, right? If you're just using ourselves as a benchmark and you have a high expectation, then you're going to be really frustrated.
So where should people set their expectation level?
I think, as I said, if cannabis was like alcohol, it would be so much easier, right? I mean, the playbook is written there. We're not reinventing the wheel, regulate it just like alcohol. It's way safer than alcohol, right? All the research is very clear, but for reasons as we just discussed, mostly international politics, we don't. I think that, if the industry in Jamaica, one of the biggest, I think, things that we all discuss and talk about and is frustrating for everyone is how to involve smaller farmers. How do you involve those that have been cultivating for a really long time? Or how do you, and currently having, essentially they want to become legal, but they're forced to continue operating in the black market, right? And now that's not just a Jamaica problem, right? That's a problem that frankly exists everywhere. When you look at California, the black market is thriving and the legal market cannot compete because they're heavily taxed. And so, obviously, for many in the industry here, we talk about it, care about the small farmers. The rules need to be easier for the small farmers. And I think, one of my intentions at Jacana was very much from the beginning to figure out a way to, really leverage that small farmer knowledge to be able to bring that in. Cultivation is a very complex business, and especially cultivation under consistency. And if we could outsource that in the brand development, then that would be way easier.
How has that process been so far coming in Jamaica? How's that been for you?
So I think that, in the case of the small farmer, if regulation was more relaxed for them, because the barrier to entry is very cost prohibitive, right? The costs of the camera systems and the security and the fencing, it's almost impossible. Now, that being said, there have been quite a lot of licenses granted for cultivation. But the next issue and the next challenge is that when you finally, scramble up the money and you build your fence and you get your camera systems, where are you going to sell that cannabis, right? Where's it going to go? And that is probably the bigger challenge right now that needs to be solved and addressed, because if it was easier to open lots of retail outlets and get it in the hands of tourists and basically truly compete with the illicit market, then you'd have a lot more avenues for smaller farmers, and then you'd see it being worthwhile. But if there is no avenue and there's 10 dispensaries on the island and they're scattered around, as small as some people like to think Jamaica is, it's pretty large and the population is spread, then you're not going to be able to truly grow the industry, I think, and eliminate the black market as many would want. And frankly, I'm sure that those in the black market want to find an opportunity to move into a regulated market, as long as it makes good business sense for them. And at the end of the day, that's what's important for livelihoods. So, definitely change needs to happen. It needs to become just like alcohol.
Right. But what about your experience, your personal experience of working with local farmers? How has that been thus far? I mean, I'm assuming that you work with local farmers, of course. How has that experience been with that Jacana?
Local farmers in what context?
And just working with them, how is it? I mean, work. How has that been? How have you brought them into your company?
I mean, our process at Jacana is very, very strict. And it's mostly because the barrier that we have to produce at is for an international market. And it means that, our quality standards are like producing a pharmaceutical medicine. So it's very cumbersome. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of testing. We have to test for metals and aflatoxins and, not just potency of the cannabis or lineage. We need to really fully understand that we have nothing that would harm anybody in our products. So our quality department at Jacana is very, very strong, and working with any partner, whether small or big, would require a very high bar in which to frankly work with us because of the standards that we have to meet with buyers on the other side.
So how is that to get the local farmers? That is, I've been close to, say, people in Westwood and so on and so forth, and I know that they have had exactly that issue with their standards are not exactly the standards that may be required, and they get offended when you try to change that.
Well, we don't have standards, right? There are none.
Well, that's part of the problem, I guess.
And that's fundamentally the problem, because there are no standards, and at Jacana we had to create our own standards, right? So like what is our bar? Like what is acceptable to us? And frankly, the bar is high because this is an inhaled product. And if you were to go out there and test the product that's on the market today, you'd find metals and pesticides and things that frankly are very damaging. And to your average Jamaican, we don't personally believe at Jacana that we should be producing to a different standard for the Jamaican market than what we give a German. And it's a really important thing for us. And so, yes, it may cost us a little bit more because we have to be more strict, but we believe that producing safe, legal cannabis is critical, and ultimately getting to a place where it's safe, legal, and affordable is critical, because why should your average Jamaican get anything less?
Well, that brings up every time you speak, my brain goes in 10 different directions. So what do you think about getting that message across to Jamaicans, especially your living in Kingston, Norbrook, Cherry Gardens, living people who at times don't even want to be seen going into a dispensary. How do you differentiate the product that you're creating as opposed to what people are selling in the streets in their minds?
Look, I can't speak because everyone's different. I can only speak to what we produce. But as I said, I think that when you look at cultivation of cannabis and what is required to produce safe cannabis, it's not as easy as one imagines, right? Even to safely produce it at home.
Right.
Because there's of course the things you feed the plant and ensuring that you're not spraying dangerous pesticides that can be harmful and frankly kill people. And then there's once you've actually taken the plant down and you're going to dry it and cure it, making sure that it's in an environment that is cool and climate controlled so that you don't get mold. And again, those are hard pieces to get right, especially if you're doing it at scale and trying to be consistent. So I think that this is our business model. If I was a small farmer in St. Elizabeth and I was thinking about my business that way, I would have a lot more control to be craft and still do it in a safe way. And I'm sure there are many out there that do. If you're thinking of, I think it really depends on your model and how you're producing. But frankly, I think that we have to be smart as an industry, and we have a responsibility as an industry and to all Jamaicans to ensure that there's some quality control, because it's not just like, it's an inhaled product, right? And it can cause serious damage.
Right. So what other products do you have? Do you only have plant product herbs, dry herbs, or do you also have your oils? Are your oils out yet?
Yeah, so actually our store is in Manor Park. Our first store is in Manor Park, Kingston, Manor Park Plaza, and there you'll see a variety of our oil products. Our extraction facility is, I would proudly say probably one of the best on the island, if not the best. It's incredible. We spend a tremendous amount of time and love and energy making sure that we can produce the cleanest oils at obviously at larger scales. We've got a great team, many of whom had come from different industries like alcohol and blending and being able to do really cool formulations. But again, quality is number one for Jacana. So to make sure that we can guarantee, we use CO2 extraction techniques, so nothing is added. We don't add anything back into the product. It is plant in a bottle. And through our lines, we have 4 different lines: joy, peace, passion, relief. We have different strengths of THC depending on your experience with cannabis for the different products. But oils is actually, and value-added products are a big part of our business.
Okay, so let me get a side note. Well, I've been to Manor Park. And I have seen your I think at the time I think you only had herbs. So your oils.
We've always had oil.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe that's right. No problem. But and you have the four I guess brands, the 4 product lines, and they're all linked to the same herbs that you use for the oils and so on. These are all homegrown? How did you come up with these strains? How did you develop these?
So, they're all proprietary strains. In-house, where we've done breeding.
Are they copywritten? Did you get the copyright for them, or patent?
No, that's a complex part of our industry.
That's why I'm asking about it.
Frankly, no, it's not something we have done. I think that strains is a funny thing, and I think an area that frankly I'm not going to go into because it's so complicated. And my is frankly here when I think it could be here. But obviously we do our best to protect as best we can and keep intellectual property rights. But it's not that straightforward. I think at the end of the day, can you grow the same 2 seeds that are from the same plant grown in 2 different places produce very different results, including the way in which they are grown, right? How they're fed, how long they're grown for. Environment plays such a massive factor. And so I think, it's going to be a long way until we really see
How
that.
how long did it take you to develop these strains? I mean, when you in fact, well, that's when you started the company, did you first go and say we need to develop our own strains? Did you try some strains out of California, say maybe this, or you see that they were changing, and then say we need to do something different locally? How did that come
Yeah, I can't really divulge that.
about? Best question I had. All right, no problem. Let's go. All right. All right. Okay. Well then. All right. Um, so well. All right. Well, let's talk about this COVID and the pandemic. I would say one. I would commend you guys for your initiative on what issuing the masks and so on and so forth during the COVID, well, during the initial stage of the COVID pandemic. Are you doing anything more, and what are you changing anything within your operation?
As I mentioned, quality control is a really big part of our production process and always has been from day one, because we've been basically producing cannabis to a pharmaceutical standard. And when you're doing that and you're audited by international regulators, you have to have masks and gloves and hats and the whole PPE. And that's why we were able to donate it, because we had it all. And so, we're already operating, even before COVID, all over the facility. There was hand washing stations and, gowning stations. So we were already operating that way. I think the biggest changes, of course, is to bring that to the dispensary, in terms of like our team. And the mask thing was something that, we really pioneered, because we obviously gave away all of our masks, and then we thought, well, let's get more, and let's get more people in Jamaica creating masks, and use, part of the proceeds from sales to basically get more masks and give them away. And so that was an initiative that we started doing pretty quickly, way before the government even announced that masks were mandatory in public.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I was told that. I remember that.
The data was very clear that mask wearing was
It's
a
going
huge
to be it's going to be a thing.
reduction of transmission around the world. So, we did our part. And the other thing that, we're committed to is, obviously transforming some of the farm to vegetable farm. The challenge actually for us on that front has been that, we're an organic farm here at Jacana, and we found it really difficult to actually get organic seeds that haven't been covered in pesticides. So it's been a challenge, but again, it's part of the journey. So that I think COVID has been challenging for everyone in different ways. Obviously from a revenue perspective, we just launched our store, so that hurt.
How did that? I mean, obviously you took a severe hit, but then again, you are in Kingston. At least your primary location is in Kingston.
It's not like to zero like many people's businesses did.
Right.
It's just it was growing, and it took a little bit of a hit. So it's now starting to grow back up again. But again, as I mentioned, I think what's important for us now is, we use this opportunity to prepare for the future, and we get ready to open up more stores and more access points, and we continue to lobby the industry on delivery, because we think that's going to make a really big difference. And, we need to get to Montego Bay. We need to get, to different places around the island. So, we're still a very, very young company with big ambitions, and we're just taking it, every day that we can. The team here are incredible. It's been such a privilege and honor to work with some of the brightest Jamaicans that I've met, and we're continuing to grow and make something work. And if we can lead the way in international Jamaican business, then great, because that's going to help create great reputation. I think one of the things that's important for the building of an industry is that, we don't see ourselves as competitors, even though technically many of us are, but that we work together to really create good and responsible business practices that are the better for all of us. I always say that one failing Jamaican company hurts us all. One failing malpractice hurts us all, because we have a reputation as a nation to maintain, whether that's to gain investment or interest, but we all have to be, on the same team, right, in order for this to work. Because if we're not, then we're just going to fight each other, and it's going to be really hard. So, you can be competitive, but then also be on side. And I think that, we encourage everybody to play that way the best that they can,
I couldn't agree more. What about another question about your locations? Are you, speaking with when I first went here to Manor Park, I've heard that you might have had ideas of having a smoking lounge, a smoking area. Is that still in the works given the pandemic, or are you going to just have dispensary locations and just focus on your products and getting them out?
A lot of our strategy in Jamaica, it's mixed, right? You've got obviously the tourist market, which, we know is going to come back eventually. You've got, various, different groups of Jamaicans. So our approach is really to take it location by location. Cannabis is consumed in Jamaica all over the island. And frankly, Jamaica has one of the highest consumption rates of cannabis globally. And that's
I was surprised at how low it was actually, but it's current, yeah. In fact, I saw that in the article. I've got figures that dispute that. We'll discuss that another time, but carry on. Yeah, please go
on. So we we very much want to make sure that we are offering something for as many people as that we possibly can. There's different, again, with one principle, right? And if you take anything away from Jacana and what we're about quality. We're about producing safe, high quality cannabis for everyone. And that's the most important thing for us.
What's your international footprint? What does that look like now?
So the international scene is as we've talked about, very fragmented and complex. We have a team.
What about Jacana's footprint? Where are you targeted? Where are you have a presence anywhere? What's happening with that?
Our team is in London. Our team is in London.
Okay.
We have a London-based team that look at the international markets, and they are doing quite a lot of work now in Europe. And that probably is the most interesting market for us currently. It's the strictest, especially Germany, very, very strict. Again, why we talk.
That's probably one of the most interesting markets would actually be Germany, because that's kind of the gateway into Europe.
So the net is that the German market's super interesting. We're spending a lot of time there. But again, early days. We'd love to not be the first to open the doors, because that's really painful.
Okay.
Here, but we do what we can to keep the ball moving. I think it's very likely that we'll be on track to do an export this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But again, it's all about meeting quality standards.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. This went a little bit longer than I'd anticipated, which is great. And I did want to talk to you a little bit longer, but I'm gonna let you go. I used to play tennis as well myself. Spent many a summers at the Ligny Club and so on and so forth. I would challenge you to a game, but I never got to the level of even properly representing myself, far less Jamaica. So I'll leave that alone. Anyways, again, thanks for your time. Yeah. Anything you wanted to add or ask me or anything, or?
No, I've got to run, but it's been really great chatting with you, and I look forward to meeting in person when we can all do that again.